Welcome, Wargamers, to the poorly remembered spawning pools of the Mortal Realms, because today we're talking about some Seraphon lore, but it's a little bit different from my other videos. You see, I had a patron over on Patreon who wished to remain unnamed. We'll get to that in a second, but basically send me out some kind of highlights of their Seraphon lore, and I absolutely fell in love with the idea, and I thought this would be a great way to discuss how you and I as players can really take little tiny narrative leads that exist all across Age of Sigmar and turn them into meaningful stories for an army. We're going to get into it here. So this is technically a fan fiction thing. It does have some actual Age of Sigmar lore, but I'll tell you when that ends and when fanfic begins. But overall, I do think it is a fantastic illustration of creating your own force in the Mortal Realms. And we'll talk about that and review kind of the things that, I kind of pulled out of this at the end. One thing I do want to say, though, is if you like this video and you're trying to support the channel, please consider either becoming a patron on Patreon or using the affiliate link here to Not Just Gaming. They have a ton of savings on all GW products, as well as a ton of awesome hobby supplies. In particular, I like Turbo Dork and Gamer's Grass quite a bit, and every use of it goes directly supporting me as a person, and then also my wife and our cats and all of those things. So thank you so much to everyone who's used that link. So let's start this discussion here with a name. You see, I mentioned before that the writer of this wanted to remain anonymous. I conversationally don't want to accidentally drop the name because I speak into the microphone like I'm speaking to a person. So today's video is brought to us by Chris P. Bacon. And Chris, you know who you are. We're going to get into your story here. So as far as where the established lore is, Chris did a great job of listing out kind of the references for this. If you have the current Seraphon Battle Tome, it's Ages of War is the name of the story or section on page 21, and the Slann Star Masters section about, kind of the background for them as characters on 22 through 23. But here's the crux of it, okay? I'm going to give a little synopsis here for us, Chris. If you watched my Realm Gate Wars series, okay, that really the initial campaign crusade that launched Age of Sigmar, there was one section of the story that was so random. I had no idea of understanding why it was there, and I do talk about that a little bit. But essentially, it's in, I believe, but there's a moment where the Stormcast Eternals are taking the soul pod carrying Alariel from one place to another. They're trying to plant her soul somewhere. And the book completely just hard right detours into a battle of Seraphon versus Khorne demons. And like Scarbrand is there. He's just thrashing stuff. He got chucked like a meteor by Khorne into this battle. The Slann who's leading it is Starmaster Zenfantika. And really the story we get here is that there's a lot of things going on outside of the perspective of the reader. Okay, so the Seraphon in this context knew that Alariel needed to get from point A to point B, saw that the Khorne demons were kind of planning an ambush of some kind, and threw Zenfantika at them. Or at least he was the nearest one to do anything. Essentially, the Seraphon army, these are the Star Master one, so he's coming down from the heavens, he's projecting ethereal demons of light upon them, and essentially shuts down the Khorne army enough so that the Hallowed Knights carrying Alariel walk into this situation. They're like, what in the ever-loving heck happened here? And they have no idea, and they just keep on going. It's a weird footnote for the main story arc, but it was a cool battle. I mean, it just had Khorne demons and Seraphon, and they were hurling lightning and stuff, and spells are being absorbed by Khorne collars, and demons are hacking and slashing. It's cool. I mean, it's really cool stuff. It's just kind of this strange insert into the campaign series. While it's not directly stated that Zenfantika died here, that's essentially where Chris P. Bacon, of course, his story picks up. Now I'm going to pause here, okay? This is the kind of thing where it is a minor story that exists in a campaign book that is now largely out of print. A lot of these things are available online. Certainly, if you do the Warhammer online, Warhammer Plus, that's what it's called. They have the vault where you can look at old white dwarfs. Those things are full of these tiny little stories just about this size with plot ideas like that. And there's easy crossover between so many of their narrative concepts to Age of Sigmar. I mean, you can pull story elements from a 40k thing and reset them in Age of Sigmar, and it'll look great. Because it's all ridiculous. I mean, let's be honest. But it's the same kind of ridiculous. It's on brand. So I wanted to pause because this is where established story ends. And as you can see, we're going to jump into how someone took this and ran with it. Because in his canon, Zenfantika dies. Now, normally when this happens, the rest of his constellation, like all the other Seraphon around him that are now brought into existence, they don't just dissipate. They pick him up, bring him back to the spawning pools, and usually like the spirit can be rebound and rebuilt and basically try to collect the remains and keep going. And even if they did that and they got his remains together and kind of, rebirthed him in a spawning pool, it wasn't going to be the same because every successive generation loses some power. Now, shortly after these events, or I should say, because of them, in light of them, Alarielle is replanted and is reborn in her warrior aspect, her season of war kind of a deal. She lets loose her song of war and it revives and revitalizes a great many things, not just, tree lords and that kind of stuff. The idea in this headcanon is that she imbued some rite of healing magic or something like that, and basically as part of it to thank Zenfantika for clearing the way for her rebirth, revives him. I'm going to read a few lines here that I like quite a bit. Zenfantika rose once more, returned to the same semblance of life that the relic priests were known for, his broken, fading mind directing that part of the transformation. But without the visions of the Starseers and the rituals of the Star Priest, his mind was left somewhat scarred, imprinted with both the magics of Guraen and a particular hatred for Khorne and all of his minions. Now, canonically, the next time we see Zenfantika in the stories, because he does show back up every once in a while, he is in the Orb Infernia of actually, I believe this was in the last book of the Rumgate Wars. I might be wrong about that. But essentially, yeah, it has to be, because Korgus Kul is there, yeah. And so the idea is that he's keeping the particular battles amongst Chaos going. Specifically, he likes to pick on Khorne, or at least ensure the other three are picking on Khorne. Now, his experience of going from being alive, fighting, being struck down by a demon, raised by a goddess of Guraen, and now having to go back into the star and kind of be its own, the Seraphon are their own thing when they're out amongst the heavens. It played a lot. And basically, if you look at the Lord Kroak model, where he's like this little withered, mummified thing, that's essentially what we're talking about. But his brain doesn't work quite right. Not firing on all cylinders, so to speak, for a Slann, which for being a devastatingly powerful magic wielder is a bit of a hindrance, but some of the memories don't flick quite right. Sometimes things get overwhelming and they blur, and sometimes their forms can kind of move a little bit. As for leaders, basically what Crispy Bacon did was list out all of the various high-level heroes. So we have, for the Skink Oracles, there is Nimiquai, which is a representation of memory, and Nepakati, I think that sounds very Italian, for foresight, and the Pale Death. And essentially, I'm going to sum up here, Crispy Bacon. The general gist is that Skink Oracles are meant to assist and kind of direct the Slann, and now they've kind of become a crutch for Zenfantika, in a sense of he's just debilitating with how the damage was done to him. So it really leans on those. They like to keep their faces hidden from others, kind of just secretive, being kind of sketchy. There is Ayeldin, the Crested King, which is sort of the leader of Zentika's guards and troops, source warrior type stuff. And then there's a whole bunch of other heroes kind of spattered throughout the entire thing, all have their own story. But the reason I really like this is because it has a narrative reason why there is a Slann at the top, why they look the way they do, but then also kind of looks around and says, well, what would a person with damaged, goods, so to speak, when it came to their ability to project psychic energy. I'm not sure what we would call that. When that has misfires, how do we support them, right? Because that's the whole purpose of Skinks, is to support the Slann. Sources defend them, Skinks support them. And so they just kind of had to come up with a new way, but they're all being generated by a fractured mind. And that makes it super interesting. And so normally in these videos, I would spin off here into why is this cool? To be honest, it's cool for the exact reasons we've already mentioned, but taking an existing lore tidbit and expanding upon it. Without, kind of all this backstory that was created, that story is really just about a Slann who came up, probably got punked real hard by Skarbrand, but they knocked each other out, and then he was a minor character somebody else. And that's it. He doesn't show up a whole lot. And those kinds of characters exist all over Age of Sigmar lore. A lot of times, those are the kinds of short stories that I do other lore videos on, like for sub-factions or, just random little bits of lore that exist throughout various battle tomes, because those are each and every one of them a different narrative lead that entire armies can be built around, and this is no exception. So Crispy Bacon, thank you so much for sending me this. I hope I didn't butcher it too much. I didn't want to go into the minutia of the details, but it's a wonderful example of how you can take lore tidbits and turn them into full stories, and I just wanted to share with everyone. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you have something similar, go ahead and throw it in the comments down below. We can all read it and hang out, or you can share it on the 2+ Stuff Discord, which is in the description down below. Look forward to hanging out with you all. Catch you next time. Happy wargaming.